What we did, our innovation was to automate the recognition of this, to use basically computer vision tools to recognize each individual animal, because these catalogs had grown large enough that it would take an hour to find one animal, right? So you're sitting there with a photo going, oh, is this animal in here? Oh, here's a match, great. Or I didn't find a match. Is this animal new or did I miss it? By automating it, we turned that hour into less than a second.
Did you know how many whales there are in the world? And in particular, do you know the global population of humpback whales? So my name is Ian Ginn, and I'm the host of Digital Talk. I'm delighted to have as our guest Ted Cheeseman from Happywhale. We approached Happywhale to be our guest as they won the AI for Planet category award at the 2026 AI for Good Impact Award during the AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva. Amongst other things, Ted is the co-founder of Happywhale. Welcome to the podcast, Ted.
Thank you so much, Ian. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to get the ball rolling, do you mind introducing yourself and this journey you've had into whale science and the organization you've created and, the great expeditions you've done?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's been an interesting journey. I'm Ted Cheeseman. I'm, as you said, the co-founder and director of Happywhale. We are basically a research platform to better understand and protect oceans through means of understanding individual whales and dolphins. My own journey here has been, well, an interesting one. I studied as a conservation biologist, tropical terrestrial focused many, many years ago. But I grew up guiding expeditions and nature tourism. My parents started a wildlife safari company when I was quite young. And so that was, a sideline. I started traveling on these trips when I was 10 in the summer times. But then when I finished grad school, I went and worked for the family company guiding, and we at that point started doing expeditions into Antarctica, which was very formative for me. And I started going to Antarctica when I was 21. That was now over 30 years ago. And in time, well, at the time I was, I will go back to science one of these days. And happily, over the course of the last 10 years, I've made that pivot back into science. So that's where I am.
And what specific conservation research challenges are you trying to solve with this project?
Well, the very specific part to understand it is that individual animals are all unique, right? That's sort of obvious, and yet we don't really think of them that way. I saw a giraffe or a whale, but that's an individual out there doing with their own story and personality and character and behaviors. And we can track that and we can follow that. We can do so with some kind of tracker or a tag. But really a wonderful thing about many animals is that you can recognize them individually. So with whales, this started quite a long time ago in the 70s when some researchers noticed from photographs, hey, that animal has a more white tail and that animal has a more black tail. And look at that one has a scar and so on. So individual photograph catalogs started to build, recognizing each animal and seeing that they're, the same animal migrating to the Gulf of Maine from the Caribbean, say, each year, and then seen again and again, long-lived animals. What we did, our innovation, was to automate the recognition of this, to use basically computer vision tools to recognize each individual animal, because these catalogs had grown large enough that it would take an hour to find one animal, right? So you're sitting there with a photo going, oh, is this animal in here? Oh, here's a match, great. Or I didn't find a match. Is this animal new or did I miss it? By automating it, we turned that hour into less than a second. And it effectively eliminated the time for searching. And that allowed us to scale the whole endeavor. So instead of searching, here's my catalog and I want to compare it with your catalog, and that effort is going to take a year, we said, great, let's take all the world's catalogs and put them together. And then we can really deepen our understanding of the oceans. And in particular, what this has allowed us to do is make just really excellent conservation science. Like, how many whales are there this year? How many were there last year? What happened when a marine heat wave changed the whole profile of the ocean, and so on. And we do that with a really fun technique called photo identification, which is accessible to anyone, right? So you go out to the ocean and you go on a whale watch boat and bring a small camera. Mobile devices don't really work, but just a small telephoto, kind of your standard camera, will work pretty well. And take a picture of a whale and upload it to Happywhale, our website, and we'll tell you typically within a couple days, hey, this is your whale, and this is that animal's story. So whenever your whale is seen again, you get to get a notification and find out, oh, my whale that I saw in California is now in Panama with a calf. And that's special, right? And so it's sort of, the idea is not so much to our goal. Our method is to identify the whales. Our goal is to open a door into a space that wasn't accessible previously. And that is to be able to see along with the whale and use that really to transform our relationship with the ocean, as opposed to something out there and far away, but something that we can relate to because I know that whale and that's my whale that I had a special experience with.
That's creating that context, I guess. And but I wonder when you started it. I mean, because you were like saying, I guess it's most likely starts with this idea of I'm interested in whales, and I would like to know who that whale is from a personal perspective because you're interested in whales. But how does this help, let's say, other people like decision makers or other people? How does it elevate it to another level of understanding, help the wider world use this information?
This is a genuinely great question. It started actually out of my own curiosity. I was expedition guiding in Antarctica, and this was 20 some years ago. I first took a digital camera to Antarctica in 2004, and I photographed a whale. And so, for context, while whale sciences and marine science is obviously a very deep subject, kind of no pun intended. There's a lot of there's a lot of history here, but at the time as a guide, like I wasn't being a scientist. I would read bits of it, but it wasn't, really at my fingertips. And but last century, because of industrial whaling, we humans removed almost every whale in the ocean. They were just we took almost all of them, right? Just like much like in North America, the massive buffalo herds, 30 million buffalo, they're all gone, right? There are just a few thousand animals left. Similar kind of scale of decline, 90+%, sometimes 99%, numbers that actually weren't really well known. And I didn't understand the scale of it at the time. I've learned a lot about this and contributed to the science behind it. But when we first started going to Antarctica in the 90s, we would not see many whales at all because it was close enough to the end of commercial whaling. What happened was in the 70s and 80s, the world said, hey, what are we doing? These animals are all almost extinct. Save the whales, right? Save whale movement came along. Also, technology evolved so that the products we were making out of whale meat and oil and blubber were cheaper elsewhere and more readily gotten and more ethically gotten. So so then we as a species decided, hey, let's save the oceans. Let's save the whales. Let's protect these. And many laws were passed banning whaling internationally. in the US, and I speak mostly from a US point of view, located in California, we created a number of laws that had strong effect here, but also impact globally. The Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, Clean Water Act. And these rules essentially made it such that the animals were protected. Fortunately, while we in some cases hunted like over 99% of the animals, there were enough left that once we stopped killing them, they began to recover. And it's kind of a good lesson in protecting the things you love. If you want them to thrive, first stop killing them. That's a good place to start, right? So, but for me, this is sort of 20 to 30 years after the whaling ended. It didn't all happen one day. It was kind of a staged thing. So this question was like, well, okay, what is the state of these whales? We started seeing more of them, more in the 2000s than in the 90s, many more in the 2010s. And now I have been party to, and back when I was guiding expedition tourism, we would lead expeditions that were focused on whales because there are so many that we can predictably, rather than hoping we would have one good experience of whales in an entire trip in Antarctica. Now we can, well, if I'm in Wilhelmina Bay and the sea conditions are good, I'll be just whales, whales, whales. It's fantastic. It's really, really quite amazing how some species in some populations have recovered. So I wanted to know what the state of them was. And so that's how, that's where I thought this technique, hey, wouldn't this be cool? First, I would like to know the story of that whale, but also science could really benefit from the data that's in my camera and in all the cameras of all the tourists that are traveling to all these places where scientists can't necessarily be every day and certainly can't be on every ship. And what that taps into is a really powerful tool, this photo identification. Like, just think of it. If let's say go to a stadium and there's 20,000 people in that stadium. Well, okay, there's 20,000 people, right? But if you know the identity of every one of those 20,000 people, that's a much richer data set. You can say a lot more. You could say, okay, what ages are interested in this sport? Where are they coming from? All these things. You can say a whole lot more than, oh, there's 20,000 people here today. Well, that's what we're able to do with these whales. And those same laws, the Endangered Species Act, internationally, the International Whaling Commission, have rules around them. These animals are protected up until the time that they are recovered. So essentially, I stepped into population biology where it's my job to say, okay, where are they? Are they recovered? How are they responding to ship traffic in the ocean? How are they responding to entanglement risks of fishing gear in the ocean? How are they responding to our warming oceans, which causes a reduction of food potentially, because warmer waters just produces less food for the animals that live in them.
Does any of your work, because we're talking about the photography, i.e., it's non-intrusive in the sense that they're not getting some sort of device on their backs. Do you correlate that with that sort of information as well? I mean, I presume, if I remember correctly, my school that it's coming back to schools, I guess. Is it schools of Wales that we call it? School of Wales? Is that what they called? School
Generally, we call them
or pod? It's
pods.
pod. Okay, pod of
Yeah.
Wales. So we've got a pod of whales. I mean, do you track them physically also with probes at all, or is that someone else's? Because I'm thinking of the correlation here. Because you've got one interesting data source, but there must be other interesting data sources where you get coming back to your point of with your camera, you're not going to be able to see how far they dive. Coming back to a comment you made earlier on about, but exactly their movements. Is that the sort of work that happens in conjunction with what you're doing, or you're part of that as well?
Yes, it's a pretty neat field. I mean, the challenge about something like a whale or a dolphin is you see like 1% or 5% of the animal, maybe 1 or 5% of the time, right? So if we want to go study elephants, we go to East Africa, and not to say there's not challenges, but you can see your subjects, and you can watch them. With whales, it's really tricky. And so a lot of what we've done is various techniques to sort of extend our sensors, right? Instead of us watching them or photographing them or filming them, we're trying to reach out into their space in some way to extend our sensors into their rather, watery and dark world. This is one end of set of techniques where, yes, we have a snapshot. Whale 1234 was in Monterey Bay on July 25th at this specific location. And we can say things about that. Oh, it's this deep, or, oh, okay. And then that whale was, 4,000 miles south 3 months ago because it was seen in, Central America or something like that. At the other end of the scale is work that's also done in my lab at UC Santa Cruz. Really fantastic stuff where we'll go out and we'll try to slide our boat up quietly close to a whale. And with a 20-foot carbon pole, like a 6 meter, 7 meter carbon pole, with a little tag at the end of it, we'll take this tag with suction cups on it and stick it onto the back of the whale. And that tag has forward and reverse cameras and all these sensors so that during the day that it's on the whale, it records everything, the sound, the temperature, the salinity, all the movements, how the whale rolled and its speed and its depth. And so when a whale feeds, it's suddenly going to slow down because they pop their mouth open. So it creates more drag. So that whale is suddenly going to slow down. It can record their tail strokes, all this fine resolution stuff, but only for a day. Whereas we, on the other end, can only get a snapshot, but over the entire life of the animal. We have whales in our database that were a whale that was first photographed in 1972, who is still alive today. His name is Old Timer, and we've known him for all those seasons. And not every season have we seen him, but we've seen him again and again between Alaska and Hawaii and Alaska and Hawaii and Alaska and Hawaii. So that combined with other techniques, and this has been one of the most fun about this work is the collaboration with other labs and other researchers and folks in our lab who are using these other techniques that are super complementary. If I might expand onward from the same question, one of my favorite studies is like I said, right, when we're sitting there on a boat, we can only see a little bit of the whale. But if you fly a drone over the whale, and depends on the place, there's lots of rules about drone use and what you can fly over and stuff. So, don't take that as, oh, cool, I'll go fly my drone. Make sure you know the rules. But permitted drones, if we fly a drone over the whale and we have a special laser rangefinder so we know exactly the height of the whale, well, the drone can actually see the whole whale much more of the time. So we'll fly that drone over the whale and we'll correlate that with a picture taken of the whale while the whale's diving. So then we know, okay, well, we have this picture of the whale and we can measure the body shape, do a bit of trigonometry, and get from that a volume of the whale. We get all these measurements of the whale, get the volume of the whale, and then we get the idea of the whale. We get the identity of that whale. Then we'll see that same animal again, say a week later in Hawaii, mom with calf. A week later, mom is nursing calf. She's delivering something like 800, sorry, 800. So she would be delivering to the calf something like 400 liters of milk a day, right? 400 liters, 400 quarts of milk to the day. She is losing 60, 70, 80 pounds a day. And the calf is gaining 20, 30, 40 pounds a day. And we can actually measure that because we're resighting that animal over time. So we can literally see how much energy is going out of her body into the calf's body. Then she swims back to Alaska with that calf. And then we can see, well, how is she doing? She's feeding, but she's also feeding her calf. And it turns out, I mean, any woman who's been pregnant will probably empathize with this feeling. She's eating and eating and eating, and yet all of her energy is being delivered to the calf, and she's barely gaining weight, while the calf is then gaining better part. Calf is literally growing an inch a day, gaining 2 millimeters of girth a day, putting on 100 pounds a day. It's a pretty amazing thing to be able to reach into that space and use a couple of really clever tools to then actually understand the biology of these creatures that, I mean, it wasn't more than a couple hundred years ago that these animals were pretty much like, unknown presumed hostile, right? And then they went from unknown presumed hostile.
Moby Dick.
Yeah. There are monsters out there. Moby Dick, exactly. This story of the animal that was the nemesis of Captain Ahab. And, he had to hunt this nemesis down, and turning that from, well, what they first turned into was known, but a resource, right? An oil well. And now we can appreciate their beauty, but also understand that whales contribute to the health of the oceans. And in doing so, they make it better for us. I mean, I think it's better to have the whales around because they're beautiful and they have intrinsic value, but they also make the oceans more productive, which means, ironically, more fish and more productivity for us. That's a sort of a thing, that these animals are part of a healthy ecosystem.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.